Hey guys, tonight we journey back to ancient Rome, a place of marble temples, sweaty togas, and death lurking behind almost every street corner. You're not just reading about it, you're in it. Smells like olive oil, sewage, and fear. You're standing beneath the towering walls of the Colosseum, and the crowd's roar feels like it's chewing your bones already. You've been chosen, or rather, volunteered. No, you're not a warrior. You're not even a criminal. You're just someone who ticked off the wrong senator. Or maybe your neighbor owed someone a favor. Either way, here you are, shoved into a holding cell that smells like wet straw, blood, and something worse. The guard slams the gate behind you and snickers. He's seen this movie before, and spoiler alert, you don't make it. So before you get comfortable, take a moment to like the video and subscribe, but only if you genuinely enjoy what I do here. And let me know in the comments where you're tuning in from and what time it is. I love seeing how far this sleepy little channel travels. Now, dim the lights, maybe turn on a fan for that soft background hum, and let's ease into tonight's journey together. The arena's floor looms ahead, a mix of sand and ancient blood, like someone tried to mop up a massacre with a beach towel. You step forward, blinking into sunlight so harsh it slices your eyes. From above, 50,000 Romans peer down, squinting, munching on roasted chickpeas, and arguing over whether you'll die fast or slow. You're the day's entertainment, and they didn't pay to be bored. The gate creaks open behind you. You glance back, just in time to see the beast gate across the arena lift. Out lumbers a lion, muscles rippling under mangy fur, mouth frothy with hunger. This one's been starved on purpose, makes the show better. That's an actual policy, by the way. Emperor Titus allegedly preferred his animals riled and lean, because a well-fed beast might just sit down and yawn. Can't have that. Your hands tremble as you pick up the wooden spear they gave you. It's blunt. Like, poke your sibling, blunt. The lion eyes you like a walking kebab. You consider running, but where? The walls are 20 feet high, lined with guards who'd love an excuse to shoot arrows. Plus, that guy dressed like Mercury up there just gave the crowd a dramatic bow. He's today's god of death, which means he'll mime your soul's journey to the underworld as you know, get torn apart. Historians still argue whether these executions were considered religious rituals or just popcorn-worthy punishment. Either way, it's not great for you. The lion snarls. You scream. It leaps. You fall. But it's not over. Turns out the worst deaths don't always end quickly. You're still alive, somehow. The lion swiped your leg open, but the guards pull it back, rope around its neck, and the crowd boos. They want more. A man in a ridiculous helmet with feathers walks out, gives you a theatrical nod, and slices your arm open just enough to make you bleed again. A second act, they call it. You're the feature presentation and the intermission joke. A lesser-known twist? Sometimes animals weren't enough. Romans trained criminals to act as mythological characters and die symbolically. You might have drawn the short straw and ended up as Prometheus, chained to a rock while an actual bird pecks your fake liver, which, yes, was probably some goat bits glued on. Or Orpheus, mauled by live leopards while pretending to strum a harp. Fringe sources even suggest they once recreated Icarus falling from the sky, with a condemned man strapped to wings and catapulted from a platform. 10 points for creativity, -10 for landing. You're drifting in and out. The blood loss is real. The sand tastes metallic. From above, children cheer, nobles place bets, and some guy starts composing a poem about your final breath. He'll recite it at dinner tonight, between olives and insults. You catch one final absurdity. They're lowering a pulley from above. Attached? A giant papier-mâché hydra head. Someone's clearly trying to spice things up. They're probably about to call in more animals, or worse, a gladiator in costume who'll play the hero and end your suffering. Theater, but make it lethal. You think of home, briefly. Your mother's bread. The worn sandals by your door. You'll never see them again. But here's the kicker. As you lie there, broken and bleeding, the crowd applauds. Not because they care, but because the next act is about to start. And you're old news. You fade to black, not with a scream, but with a weird sense of insult. Not only did you die, you were filler. The flames lick higher, and your feet are already too warm. You're standing in the center of the forum, surrounded by a tight ring of sweaty spectators. Senators in embroidered togas, fishmongers still smelling like sardines, and even a few kids perched on shoulders, all squinting against the sunlight as they watch you tied to a stake. It's not your birthday. It's your burning day. You cough. Not because you're on fire, yet, but because of the thick resin smoke curling up from the bundles of pitch-soaked wood stacked neatly around your legs. It smells like pine and despair. Two men with shaved heads are whispering something about the crowd size. One of them laughs. Maybe it's about your robes. Or the fact that someone spelled your name wrong on the placard hanging from your chest. You see, you made the ultimate mistake. You believed in something that wasn't Rome. Maybe you followed a strange new cult. Or maybe you just refused to bow to the emperor's statue. Either way, you're now part of a classic Roman combo, death and public spectacle. So here you are. Flames incoming. And you can't help but notice that the sun is hot enough already. The guards spread out. One carries a torch like it's a baton in a very depressing relay. Your legs are shaking. Someone throws a turnip at your face. You don't even like turnips. Historians still argue whether early Christians were systematically targeted or just convenient scapegoats when things went south. Like that time Emperor Nero needed someone to blame for Rome's Great Fire in 64 CE. Let's blame the weirdos who meet in candlelit basements and refuse to worship me, he likely thought, while plucking his lyre and watching the city smoke like barbecue meat. But regardless of the big picture politics, the small picture result is the same. You're kindling. The torch dips toward the wood, and for a moment the world slows. You remember your father's face. Your sister's laugh. The way the bakery smelled in the morning, cinnamon and sourdough. These tiny things come rushing in like a final gift from your brain before the screaming starts. Because it does start. Your toes ignite first. Then the hem of your robe catches with a whoosh, and there's a crackling sound, like someone crumpling parchment right next to your ears. The crowd leans in. It's rude, honestly. Personal space still exists, even when you're combusting. The fringe detail most people forget? Romans sometimes added extra drama. They'd sprinkle sulfur or oil to enhance the effect. Make the fire burn brighter, faster, more entertaining. Some say they even used specially treated fabrics that would cling to the skin like burning lace. Lovely. You cry out, and the sound is swallowed by the heat. Your lips dry instantly. Your eyelids sting. The smoke is thick and bitter, curling up your nose, making every breath a mistake. Then you start seeing things. Is that a bird? No. A plume of smoke shaped like wings. Is that laughter or just the hiss of flame? It doesn't matter. You're not just dying, you're being turned into a cautionary tale. A hot take, if you will. Some in the crowd nod solemnly, thinking maybe you deserved this. Others fidget, wondering what would happen if they refused to bow. One child watches you with a strange intensity. One day, that kid might join your same strange faith. Or your same fate. One mainstream Roman fact? Executions like yours were often timed for midday, when the sun was at its peak, and the streets were crowded. Why waste a perfectly good death at dawn, when only the street cleaners are awake? You pass out once, but the pain snaps you back. Your skin blisters. You lose control of your legs, not that they were doing much good. Then the fire finds your chest, and your breath shortens to a rasp. You're melting, basically. Just slower than anyone would like. And then someone in the crowd coughs. It's a small moment, but it breaks the trance. A senator turns away, muttering about lunch. A vendor sets down his date basket and starts hawking boiled eggs again. The world moves on. Your death, which moments ago was center stage, is already background noise. And somewhere behind the forum, in the shadow of a temple, two priests argue over whether Jupiter would have approved. One of them says yes. The other shrugs. Historians still argue whether religious burnings like yours were more about purification or punishment. Or maybe just politics. Rome loved blending all three. And you're nearly gone now. Your body slackens. The flames start to dull. The crowd disperses. A bird lands near your ashes and pecks at a dropped plum. In a few hours, a slave will sweep the coals into a pit and scatter sand over what's left. Someone else will die here tomorrow. Maybe not by fire, but just as forgotten. And the worst part? You never even got to finish your turnip. You wake up in the dark, gasping for air. But you're not dreaming, you're drowning. There's no light, no moon, no stars. Just water, endless and cold, sloshing against stone walls. You're in a well. Or maybe a sewer. Your arms are bound, and your legs are already too numb to kick. The rope burns your wrists, soaked and fraying. Above, you hear a trapdoor slam shut. It's silent again. This is how the Romans dealt with parricides, those who killed their own parents. A crime so foul, it deserved a punishment unlike any other. They called it the pena culiae, or punishment of the sack, which sounds harmless, until you remember the sack isn't empty. Something brushes your leg. You twist. You scream, bubbles escaping your mouth in a frantic stream. The sack shifts. It's alive in here. And not just because of you. There's a monkey, and a dog, and a snake. You're all stuffed into the same leather pouch, sewn shut with heavy cords, then dropped into the Tiber like an ancient party piñata, except the only thing that explodes is your will to live. Historians still argue whether the animals were always included, or just part of the later, more theatrical version of the sentence. But you're here now, and you're not alone. The dog panics first. It yelps, claws at the wet sides of the sack, and kicks your stomach hard enough to knock the air from your lungs. Then the monkey shrieks, high-pitched and furious, biting at whatever it can reach, including you. Meanwhile, the snake is just waiting. You can't see it, but you feel it. Scaly, silent, cold. It slithers across your thigh like spilled wine. You're too scared to move. You wish you could apologize to your mother. You wish you hadn't hidden the knife under your bed. You wish you hadn't left fingerprints. Or neighbors. This wasn't a spur-of-the-moment crime, was it? You had your reasons. Everyone has reasons. Rome didn't care. Filial piety was sacred. Fathers were almost divine. You broke the chain, and now the chain is sinking, with you inside it. A mainstream fact, this punishment wasn't some obscure village practice. It was Roman law, codified by emperors and used for centuries. Even emperors like Hadrian reinstated it during his reign. Some say it was symbolic, throwing you into nature's chaos after destroying the social order. The dog bites your shoulder. You thrash. The water's rising inside the sack. Your face presses against the soaked leather wall, breathing through tiny gaps between stitches. But the monkey is panicking too. It scratches your chest, shrieking, scrambling over you and the dog in a desperate attempt to stay above the waterline. And the snake? It strikes. You don't feel the bite right away, just a sharp pressure on your calf. But the venom spreads quickly. Your body goes stiff, cold. It's like drowning inside your own skin. The irony is that even without the animals, the sack alone might have killed you. But this is just cruel creativity. There's a fringe theory that the animals were chosen for symbolic reasons. The dog for loyalty, now turned against you. The monkey for mockery, reflecting your base nature. The snake for betrayal. Sometimes even a rooster was included, crowing uselessly as you sank. Rome had a flair for allegory, apparently. The monkey bites your ear. You scream again. The water rises. The sack tightens as air escapes. It's over your mouth now. Your nose. The last thing you feel is the snake curling around your waist like a cold belt of guilt. And then you're gone. The sack bobs once on the Tiber's murky surface. Then it sinks, vanishing beneath the ripples. By tomorrow, it'll be lodged under a bridge, gnawed by river fish. In a week, no one will remember your name, just that another parricide paid the price. And somewhere in a villa, a senator tells the story at a dinner party, right between courses. Guests nod, sipping watered wine. Yes, yes, someone says, but I heard they used a leopard once. Everyone laughs. You don't. Because you're at the bottom now, still tangled in rope, forever snarled in Rome's darkest justice. And oddly enough, you never liked dogs anyway. You're walking under the midday sun, sweating through your tunic, your feet raw from miles of gravel road, when a soldier grabs you by the elbow. No words, no questions. Just a sharp tug and a nod. You're drafted. Not into the army. No, that'd be too clean. You're drafted for damnatio ad bestias, the damnation to beasts. Entertainment for the masses, punishment for criminals, or just a fun day out at the Colosseum. Your crime doesn't matter. Theft, treason, maybe just bad luck. The emperor's in town and the games need bodies. You fit the bill. And you probably won't survive the afternoon. They toss you in a cell. Cold, damp, reeking of urine and mold. You sit in the corner, listening to muffled screams and the low growl of something very large beyond the stone wall. Something with claws. Something that hasn't eaten yet. You try not to think about it. But you do. You can't help it. Across from you, another man is praying. Loudly. Desperately. His toga is still stained with wine from the night he was arrested. He tells you his name, but you're too scared to remember it. At dawn, the gate creaks open. You're herded like cattle into a cramped tunnel beneath the Colosseum. The rumbling above is deafening. Tens of thousands of Romans, all cheering. They want blood. Not politics. Not speeches. Just blood. Preferably yours. The floor shakes. Machinery groans. One of the trapdoors lifts, and suddenly, light. Sunlight, blinding and hot. Then the scent of dust, sweat, and blood slaps your face like a thrown amphora. You're in the arena now. Mainstream fact, the damnatio ad bestias was a popular form of capital punishment during the Roman Empire, especially under emperors like Trajan and Marcus Aurelius. Criminals, slaves, and prisoners of war were regularly thrown to wild animals as part of the day's spectacles. It was cheap, messy, and wildly popular. A lion prowls toward you. Not a mangy circus cat. A real lion, imported from Africa, trained just enough to be angry, hungry, and theatrical. It hasn't eaten for 2 days. That was the plan. They starve the beasts so they're ready to kill on cue. You freeze. Your hands tremble. You're holding a wooden sword. Decorative. Splintered. Totally useless. The lion roars. You drop the sword. The crowd erupts, roaring louder than the beast. They love a coward. The anticipation is better than the kill. You stumble backward, tripping on a chunk of bone, someone else's tibia, maybe, and the lion charges. You run. Not toward freedom. There isn't any. Just around the edge of the arena, kicking up dust and tears. The lion gives chase, casually at first. It knows it'll catch you. It has all morning. Historians still argue whether victims were ever drugged to heighten the drama. Slower reflexes, more frantic screaming. Some even suggest that handlers used trained lions who played with their prey before finishing the job. All you know is, this one looks like it skipped rehearsal. You dart behind a stone pillar. It leaps over it. The impact knocks you flat. Your ears ring. Your tunic tears. And then, it pounces. Its weight crushes your ribs. You hear something snap. Maybe your collarbone. Maybe your hope. Then it doesn't bite. It waits. Paws pinning your chest, breath hot on your face. The lion stares into your eyes. The crowd is eating this up. Somewhere, an official signals to keep it going. The games are choreographed chaos. This is your starring role, the screaming fool who thought he could escape. And then, the bite. Not to the throat. That would be merciful. No, it grabs your leg. Shakes you like a rag doll. The pain is blinding. You kick, scream, curse every god you can name. The lion growls, offended, and clamps harder. A fringe detail: some Roman arenas used elephants and bears for this punishment too. One record mentions a rhinoceros charging a chariot full of condemned men. Another tells of a crocodile that just sat there, disinterested, while the crowd booed. Guess even ancient death had off days. You're bleeding now. The sand is red around you. The lion is getting bored. It steps away briefly, pacing, licking your blood off its jowls. You try to crawl, dragging yourself with your elbows. The gate is only yards away. You won't make it. A second lion enters. Why stop at one? This one is younger, faster, meaner. It snarls as it eyes you, and then charges. Your last memory is a blur of fur, teeth, and roaring applause. The sky spins. The world darkens. You feel your own heartbeat, and then nothing. Above, the emperor gives a lazy thumbs down. The crowd chants your name, not because they remember it, but because someone scrawled it on the day's program scroll. Later, they'll hose down the sand. The lions will rest. And the next group of prisoners will be marched in. You were just the warm-up act. Your face is still blurry in the crowd's memory. Maybe a smear of blood here, a torn tunic there, but no one has time to mourn. The games move on. Another name gets etched into the program scroll. But you're someone else now. Someone newer. Someone just sentenced to death by crucifixion. Yeah, that one. You've probably heard about crucifixion. Maybe from movies. Maybe from that one very famous carpenter-turned-messiah. But what those films don't really convey, what no flickering screen or Sunday sermon can quite prepare you for, is just how long, humiliating, and absolutely miserable this death really is. You're tied to a wooden post now, arms roped behind your back, your skin already flayed by lashes. The lashes were optional, but hey, Roman creativity knows no bounds. You're not sure which is worse, the pain from the lashes or the fact that they stopped halfway through to go grab lunch. Mainstream fact: crucifixion wasn't just about killing someone. It was about breaking them. Rome used it as a public warning, a neon-lit horror show in wooden form. It could take hours, sometimes days, to die. And that was the point. They march you through the streets. People throw things. Food scraps. Stones. Insults in languages you don't even understand. You look down and realize you're wearing nothing. Modesty isn't part of the process. Every Roman knows the body becomes just another prop once the sentence is set. Fringe detail: some records suggest victims were crucified facing the city wall as an extra form of shame, like, hey, look at what happens when you mess with us. Others say they were forced to carry signs around their necks explaining what they did. Your sign just says, thief. But you swear it's a misunderstanding. Too bad. You stumble. They whip you again, not for fun, well, maybe a little, but because you're slowing the procession. The wooden crossbeam digs into your shoulder. It's not smooth. It's not varnished. It's just wood. Splintered, heavy, sticky with someone else's old blood. Finally, you arrive. It's not a hilltop. It's not some grand cinematic ridge with the sunset behind you. It's just a dry patch outside the city wall, already dotted with half-rotted posts and dried footprints. The stench of decay is hard to ignore. The executioners are bored. You can tell. One's picking his teeth. The other's asking if they'll make it to the tavern by dusk. But they've done this 1,000 times. You're just woodwork. They throw you down. You hit the dirt hard. Then they pull out the nails. Here's where the movies lie. They don't go through the palms. Not really. That would tear too easily. They aim for the wrists, where the bones are tougher. You feel the first spike press against your skin, and then the hammer falls. The sound is disgusting. Not loud. Just wrong. A dull, cracking thunk followed by your own scream. Then the second nail. Then both feet, awkwardly bent and stacked together. The pain is sharp, sure, but the real problem? You can't breathe. Historians still argue whether victims were nailed at all or simply tied. Archaeological evidence is limited. Only one skeleton has ever been found with a crucifixion nail still embedded in the bone. But your lungs don't care. Whether by rope or iron, they're gasping. They hoist you up. The whole structure creaks. The beam slides into its post socket. And suddenly, you're upright. Sort of. Slouched, straining, sagging from your own weight. Every breath is a battle. Every twitch feels like you're being torn apart. The sun isn't merciful. It just bakes your skin. Your open wounds sizzle in the heat. Flies land and stay. You twitch, but you can't swat. You sob, but no one notices. A joke floats up from the soldiers. Something about whether you'll outlast the guy from yesterday. Another one bets you won't make it to sunset. Here's a cheerful tidbit. Romans sometimes left crucified victims up for days, naked, rotting, pecked by birds, gnawed by stray dogs. The idea was to erase not just your life, but your dignity. Your family usually wasn't allowed to retrieve the body. You're thirsty. No one offers water. Your mouth dries into sandpaper. Your tongue sticks to your teeth. Your muscles twitch involuntarily. You try to shift your weight, just to breathe a little easier, but every movement reopens the wounds. Time stops making sense. An hour feels like a year. Your arms are numb now. Your chest burns. You keep waiting for the moment when it all goes black. But your body is stubborn. It clings to life. Every heartbeat is a betrayal. Someone throws a rock. It hits your ankle. You hear children laughing nearby. Someone's selling roasted chickpeas. Life goes on, for them. For you, it's frozen in a loop of pain, sun, and slow suffocation. You black out briefly, only to wake up again to the same horror. Still there. Still hanging. Still dying. Eventually, when your strength is gone and your lungs collapse and your body gives in, that's when death finally comes. Quiet. Almost unnoticed. Your head droops forward. Your shoulders slump. And the flies take over full time. If the executioners are feeling generous, they'll jab you with a spear to make sure you're dead. If not, you'll just hang there. 4 days. A warning. A silhouette in the Roman skyline. A memory no one asked for. The memory of your crucifixion hasn't even finished baking under the Roman sun before we pivot, because now, you're someone else entirely. A different sentence. A new face staring down one of the most feared punishments of ancient Rome. Damnatio ad bestias, condemnation to the beasts. Yep. Tonight, you're lion food. No metaphor. No poetic distance. You're in a holding cell beneath the Colosseum, surrounded by the sour stench of fear, manure, and metal. Your hands are bound. Your knees won't stop shaking. And through the iron-barred window in the heavy door, you can hear the roar of the crowd. Tens of thousands, maybe more. Not here to save you. Just here to watch. Mainstream fact. Damnatio ad bestias was a form of capital punishment reserved for enemies of the state, traitors, deserters, and the really unlucky. It wasn't just execution, it was public performance. You weren't dying for justice. You were dying for applause. A guard opens your cell door with a creak that might as well be thunder. You blink into the sunlight as you're shoved into the arena. The heat slaps you. The noise swells. The whole Colosseum vibrates with bloodlust and curiosity. The sand feels too white, almost soft beneath your bare feet. You think about running, but there's nowhere to go. No cover. Just a wide open stage and thousands of eyes, all hungry for something messy. Fringe tidbit. Sometimes, the condemned were dressed in costumes, animal skins, mythological characters, even gods, to add a theatrical flair. Some unlucky souls had their hands replaced with claws, or were sewn inside the carcass of a dead animal for extra drama. Today, you're spared the pageantry. You're just you. Maybe that makes it worse. From a shadowy gate, something shifts. A low growl ripples through the dust. And then you see it. A lion, golden and massive, pads into the arena. Its muscles ripple like drawn bowstrings, and its mouth opens in a yawn that reveals teeth longer than your fingers. Historians still argue whether the beasts were always truly hungry. Some sources suggest they were starved before the event, others say handlers wanted them calm enough to prolong the drama. Either way, you don't feel particularly comforted. You take a step back. The crowd jeers. Some boo. They want spectacle, not cowardice. The lion's eyes lock onto yours, amber and ancient, and you realize this is not a noble creature. This is not nature's misunderstood beast. This is an apex predator in a cage-shaped theater, and you're the third act. You try to stand tall. Pretend you're not afraid. But your legs betray you. The lion prowls closer, its tail flicking, its breath hot and rank as it exhales through flared nostrils. For a moment, you hope maybe it'll get distracted. Maybe someone in the crowd will sneeze, and the lion will have a momentary identity crisis. But then it lunges. The first impact isn't claws. It's its weight. You go down like a broken doll. The arena erupts. Your shoulder dislocates on impact. You scream. The lion swipes. Not fatal, but your arm is suddenly red, and the crowd loves it. Here's the thing, you don't die immediately. That's the point. The Romans didn't engineer this punishment for efficiency. They wanted a slow, chaotic unraveling. The lion tears at your flesh in half-hearted bites, pacing off and returning like a cat with a broken toy. Your screams aren't a problem. They're the soundtrack. If you're lucky, one of the other animals finishes the job. Sometimes it was leopards, bears, even crocodiles. Imagine that, being eaten by a crocodile in a stadium. Some days, it wasn't animals at all, but specially trained executioners dressed as animals. That's uncomfortably avant-garde. Another bite. Your vision blurs. Your heartbeat hammers in your throat. Somewhere above, a vendor yells about honeyed figs. Life goes on. For everyone but you. The lion pins you. You don't fight anymore. You just watch the clouds drift over the high awnings of the amphitheater. They used to stretch giant canvas sails, called velaria, over the top to shade the wealthy. You'll never sit up there. Never taste wine again. Never do anything but feed this beast, and this crowd, and this empire's appetite for horror disguised as entertainment. The final blow comes when you least expect it. A single bite at the neck. Swift. Almost kind. Your body slumps. Your spirit floats, maybe. If that's how it works. One more forgotten soul among the bones swept nightly from the sand. The crowd cheers. And then turns their attention to the next poor soul being led from the shadows. You're ash now. Or maybe you're lion poop. Either way, your previous life, mauled in front of 50,000 fans, is over. But death doesn't wait. Tonight, you're reborn again, and surprise, you're still doomed. This time, you're tied to a heavy plank of wood, naked from the waist down. The sun burns your skin while flies pick at your ankles. You're squinting at the horizon, trying not to vomit from fear, because you know what's coming. The scourge, Rome's legendary whip. Not just any whip. This one's designed for psychological and physiological ruin. And you're about to learn what it means to be flayed alive. Mainstream fact, Roman scourging, flagellatio, was often a preliminary punishment, especially before crucifixion. But in some cases, it was the sentence. If Rome didn't want to kill you outright, it would just reduce you to something worse. A twitching, half-conscious mess of shredded muscle and regret. You hear it before you see it, the slow slap of leather cords dragging behind a man's footsteps. He's not in a hurry. Why would he be? You're not going anywhere. The whip's name is flagrum, and it's not just leather. No, that would be too kind. This one has tiny bits of metal and bone braided into the ends. It's designed to catch, tear, and rip. Fringe tidbit, wealthier citizens could sometimes bribe their executioner to go easy, or even substitute softer materials. But you're no senator's nephew. You're just a name on a list. Your tormentor steps into view. He's built like a retired blacksmith and smells like old wine and iron. He raises the whip, and down it comes. First lash, more shock than pain. It lands across your shoulder blades like lightning, opening a thin red ribbon across your skin. Your body flinches before your brain catches up. The crowd around the courtyard winces in satisfaction. It's a good one. Second lash. Worse. The tip curls under your ribs. You scream, high and animalistic. That's when you realize, this is designed to make you scream. To make you feel every layer of skin part weighs like paper in rain. Historians still argue whether scourging had a consistent limit. Some sources say 40 lashes was the max, but Roman records show it often went far beyond that, especially for slaves or those accused of treason. Sometimes, there was no limit, just a bored official and a man with a strong arm. Third lash. Your knees buckle, even though you're tied. The world spins. The blood runs warm down your thighs and pools at your toes. You try not to cry. Crying, ironically, makes it worse. It makes your breathing shallow, and your body tense, which means you twitch at each hit. Which means deeper tearing. The whip lands again and again, sometimes catching bone. Your back is no longer a surface, it's a landscape. Raw, red, steaming. Like someone flung soup across your spine. Somewhere deep in your fading consciousness, you remember the bizarre Roman belief that punishment purified the soul. That suffering was a necessary part of becoming truly Roman again. As if pain could reset your moral compass. That thought almost makes you laugh. Almost. You wonder who else has stood here. Jesus, sure. Spartacus, maybe. Or that guy who stole figs from the wrong vendor. You don't remember his name, but he screamed just like you are now. Then comes the salt. Yep, that's real. In some cases, the wounds were rubbed with salt or vinegar after the scourging. Not out of cruelty. Okay, yes, partly out of cruelty, but mostly to prevent infection. Or, more specifically, to keep you alive just long enough to feel every consequence. The salting feels like fire. Your whole back arches. Your throat rips from yelling. Even the flies scatter. The guard with the whip doesn't smile, doesn't gloat. He just keeps going, methodical and indifferent. This is his job. You're his afternoon. Eventually, your body goes limp. You're not unconscious, just incapable of holding it together anymore. Your muscles twitch on their own. Your skin has ceased being skin. It's more like pulp, or cloth dipped in wine. Somewhere inside you, the pain has overflowed, and now your mind floats just above your body, watching the blood drip. You can't tell if it's been 10 lashes or 100. You try to count, but you keep losing track. You focus on the sound of the whip slicing air. 1. Crack. 2. Crack. But eventually, even the sounds fade. Your ears ring. Your vision goes white at the edges. You expect to die, but Rome isn't done with you yet. A splash of cold water slams your eyes open. You're released from the post. Your knees give way, but strong hands yank you to your feet. You're marched, dragged, really, back to the cells. You think you catch your own reflection in a puddle. But it's hard to be sure, because your face looks like someone else's now. A bruised, broken version of the person who once dared to displease Rome. You collapse on straw that smells like old blood. Your body pulses in silence. The bleeding eventually stops, but the memories don't. You'll flinch for the rest of your life, if you live long enough to get one. And if you don't, well, there are worse ways to die. You've already experienced several. You survived the scourging. Barely. But tonight, your pulse quickens again. You're standing in a dim corridor under the Colosseum, surrounded by cages that shake with low, rumbling growls. The air smells like blood and raw meat, and you're the meat. No more whipping. No more salt. This time, it's the arena. Damnatio ad bestias, condemnation to beasts. One of the most feared executions in the Roman world. And unfortunately for you, it's on today's schedule. Mainstream fact. Condemned criminals, especially slaves, traitors, and early Christians, were often thrown to wild animals as public spectacle. It was both punishment and entertainment. Like Sunday brunch, if Sunday brunch involved tigers and existential dread. You're shoved toward a barred gate. Behind it, a lion paces. You try to tell yourself that maybe he's tired. Or maybe he's full. He's not. The handlers jab at him with long poles, riling him up. His eyes are glowing in the torchlight. You're wearing only a loose tunic, and you've been starved for days, just enough to make the panic set in faster. Here's the twist, you're not armed. But you are holding a wooden stick the length of your forearm. Cute. Rome loves a good joke. The crowd above roars like surf crashing against cliffs. You can't see them, but you can hear them, chanting, shouting, wagering how long you'll last. Historians still argue whether all bestiarii, those thrown to animals, were completely unarmed. Some sources mention tiny blades, or theatrical props like shields made of painted canvas. Either way, none of it was for your protection. It was for flair. The gate creaks open. You step into the sunlight, blinking hard. The lion's already halfway out, sniffing the sand. He doesn't charge. That would be too simple. No, he circles. Slowly, deliberately, like he's been trained to savor the kill. And sometimes, they were trained. Fringe tidbit, Roman handlers could condition animals to draw out the chase, to drag the spectacle. A clean bite to the throat is efficient, but a few minutes of slapping you around first? That's box office gold. Your stick shakes in your grip. You try to back away, but the arena wall is higher than you thought. No ladders. No escape. The lion makes his move. He lunges, not at you, but past you, swiping one massive paw across your back. You spin, stunned. The crowd goes wild. Blood flows down your shoulder. It's not deep, but it's enough to make you scream. He circles again. This time, when he comes, you raise the stick and jab. It pokes his nose. Not hard, but enough to make him pause. For about half a second. Then he knocks the stick away like it's a twig and barrels into you with the weight of a small horse. Your chest collapses under his forepaws. You hit the sand hard. All air leaves your lungs in a hump. You can't even scream this time. He bites. Not the throat. The leg. Because he's not done. Your thigh is clamped in jaws the size of your torso. You hear the tendons snap before you feel it. When the pain does arrive, it's like fire and ice together. You writhe, but he holds firm. Not crushing, just holding. Like a cat pinning a toy. Then, he lets go. Another circle. You're too injured to stand. Your tunic is soaked red. Your eyes roll back. Somewhere in the crowd, someone's cheering your name. Or maybe cursing it. You can't tell. You're not listening anymore. Some animals, like leopards or wolves, were known to disembowel their victims quickly. Lions. They liked to maul. You're lucky, in a sense. Others were gored by bulls, or pecked by trained birds. Ostriches could even be made to stomp people to death. Creative. The lions had enough. Final lunge. His mouth finds your neck. Not quite the jugular, but close. You feel the pressure, the pull, the twist. Then, darkness. But here's the real kicker. You don't actually die in the arena. Not immediately. Because sometimes, the beast gets bored. Sometimes, it walks off, leaving you broken but breathing. In those cases, slaves with spears come out to finish the job. Quickly, messily, and without ceremony. They don't want you stealing the show. But if you do die in front of the crowd, you're just part of the act. Maybe you're dragged off by a hook. Maybe you're left for another animal, like a cleanup crew on 4 legs. You've become what Rome loves most, a moment of drama. A flicker of suffering. A snack with narrative structure. And when the next victim steps into the sand, they'll barely remember your name. You don't die from the lion. Let's pretend for now that by some absurd miracle, You're dragged out of the arena in pieces but alive. Maybe the handlers decide your suffering isn't done. Maybe the crowd wants more variety in the matinee. So, once the wounds are barely stitched and your spirits wrung out like a wet tunic, they give you a new sentence: crucifixion. Yep. Just when you thought things couldn't get any worse, they absolutely do. You're back under Roman custody, chained and silent, bones barely knitting. The sentence reads simply: Cruci affigendus est, he is to be fixed to a cross. It's not personal. It's policy. Mainstream fact. Crucifixion was a standard Roman punishment for slaves, traitors, and rebels. It wasn't designed to kill you fast. It was meant to kill you slow. And publicly. They don't take you straight to the cross. Oh no. First, you're made to carry it. You groan under the weight of the patibulum, the horizontal beam. It's rough-hewn wood, and it gouges into your back, still raw from lion claws. A few people in the street watch you stagger past, and no one intervenes. Some spit. Others avert their eyes. You're not even a person now. You're a condemned prop. And here's the twist. The full crucifix, the cross as we imagine it today, wasn't always used. Sometimes it was a simple, upright pole. Other times, a T-shape. Historians still argue whether the classic Latin cross was as standard as we think. Eventually, you reach the place. It's not on a hill. That's just a good angle for paintings. More likely, it's a junction outside town, where lots of people pass. Maximum exposure. Maximum humiliation. They strip you naked. All the way. Not for efficiency, just for cruelty. You're thrown to the ground. Two men hold your arms out over the beam. Another one raises a mallet. You look up, and then away. But the sound comes anyway. A thick, wet crack as the nail punches through your wrist. Not the palm. That would tear. They know this. The nail goes between bones, through nerves. Fire explodes in your fingers. Quirky tidbit, Romans sometimes reused nails from crucified bodies. They were considered talismans of power. In fact, Roman soldiers were known to sell them to superstitious collectors after executions. The second wrist. Same process. You jerk, sob, scream. One soldier casually wipes blood off his sandal. Then they lift the beam. It's awkward and heavy. You're not helping. You can't. Your arms stretch. Your chest pulls tight. You feel like you're being torn in two. At the upright post, they drop the beam onto a notch. You're hanging now. Sagging. Arms extended, shoulders dislocating one by one. Then the legs. They twist you sideways, pressing your feet against the post. One long nail goes through both heels. It's clumsy, slow. The mallet swings again. You nearly black out. And just like that, you're crucified. Now comes the hard part. You wait. Death doesn't come from the wounds. Death comes from exhaustion. From not being able to breathe. Your body sags. Gravity pulls everything down. You can't inhale unless you push up on the nails in your heels. But pushing means agony. Every breath is bought with screaming. Birds circle. Insects find the wounds first. Then the birds land. Sometimes, they wait until you're still. Sometimes, not. It's hot. You sweat. You cry. Your bladder lets go. Time becomes syrupy. You lose track of hours. Or is it days? There's no mercy. One of the guards picks up a stick with a soaked sponge. You think it's water. It's not. It's vinegar. It stings your lips and burns your mouth. You gag. He laughs. Historians still argue whether victims of crucifixion were ever offered painkillers like wine mixed with myrrh. Some sources suggest it as a gesture of minor mercy. Others say it was just to dull the spectacle, not the pain. Eventually, you stop pushing yourself up. That's when the suffocation begins. Slow. Relentless. Your lungs fill. Your arms cramp. You can't draw breath. Not deep enough. You panic, but it doesn't help. There's no air here. Only agony. If they want to speed it up, they'll break your legs. A sharp, fast crack with a club. No more pushing means quicker asphyxiation. But if they want a lesson made of you, if they really want to make an example, they let you hang. 4 hours. Or days. Until your heartbeat fades into silence, and your body slumps permanently. No burial. Not unless someone important claims you. Fringe fact: crucifixion victims were often denied proper burial rites, their bodies left to rot or be eaten by wild dogs. Roman law had no interest in dignity after death. Eventually, the flies own you. So do the whispers. You're one of many, just another shadow nailed to a plank. The people who pass by don't know your name. Don't ask your story. They just glance up, wrinkle their nose, and walk on. Rome has moved on. But for you, every second is the longest one you've ever lived. You would think, after crucifixion, we'd reached the summit of misery. But no. Ancient Rome, with its boundless creativity and suffering, has one more grotesque performance waiting backstage. The damnatio ad bestias, condemnation to the beasts. And no, we're not just revisiting lions. Tonight's headliner is different. Tonight, it's wild boars. Maybe a leopard. Maybe, if you're truly lucky, a hippo with something to prove. You're back in the arena. The wounds from crucifixion? Maybe they never even happened in this timeline. Let's rewind to a slightly different fate, one just as final, but a little more theatrical. You've been sentenced to be torn apart by animals. Why? Maybe you're a runaway slave, a petty thief, or simply the fall guy for a senator's bad poetry. Either way, today, you're the entertainment. Mainstream fact: damnatio ad bestias was used during the Roman Empire, especially under emperors like Trajan and Nero, both of whom loved spicing up lunch breaks with a little blood. The condemned were usually criminals or enemies of the state, though enemy could mean guy who blinked wrong in front of a statue. And so you're marched, shackled, into the Colosseum. Again. This time, there are props. Fake trees. Painted scenery. A comically large papier-mâché mountain. The Romans loved a theme, even in execution. They dress you up, maybe as a barbarian king, or a mythical monster. Whatever gets a laugh. You're part of a venatio, an animal hunt turned public theater. And the audience loves a good costume. The crowd roars as the gate lifts. Silence. Then the sound, a low, chuffing snort. Not majestic. Not regal. Just feral. Enter the boar. It's huge. Maybe 400 pounds of twitching muscle and razor-sharp tusks. The kind of beast that could turn a picnic into a funeral in 3 seconds flat. And it's hungry. Quirky tidbit: wild boars were not native to the Colosseum, obviously. They were imported from forests and provinces all across the empire. In one instance, a show featured over 700 wild animals, including elephants and ostriches, released in waves. You're handed a wooden stick. That's it. No armor. No help. No chance. The boar charges. And oh, it's fast. You try to dodge, but chains at your ankles make it awkward. The tusks slam into your thigh, tossing you like laundry. You land in dust, bleeding already. And the crowd? They're eating it up, literally, sometimes, with olives and roasted dormice. You stagger to your feet. Another gate opens. Now it's a leopard. Lean. Gold-flecked. Silent. You hear the crowd gasp as it slinks forward, shoulders low, eyes fixed. You're no longer the protagonist here. You're a chew toy. And still, the Romans clap and cheer like it's a gladiator match. Because, to them, it kind of is. Historians still argue whether some condemned men were trained slightly in fighting animals just to prolong the show. A clumsy death was entertaining. But a drawn-out battle? That sold out seats. The leopard pounces. You feel claws rake your back before you can turn. Teeth snap at your shoulder. You scream, roll, swing your pathetic stick, and hit nothing. The leopard vanishes, prowling behind the next fake tree. Then the boar is back. 2 animals. 1 you. Blood on sand. And it's not even half-time. At some shows, they used trained bears, massive brown beasts with a knack for dramatic timing. Other days, crocodiles, with handlers guiding them to the condemned, then yanking them back for comic effect. Roman cruelty often came with a punchline. Fringe fact: some executions involved tying the victim to a chair, covering them in meat or honey, and then releasing animals to interact. Not a quick death, just a slow, humiliating unraveling of your final moments. You stumble, dragging one leg behind. The leopard lunges again, and this time the claws catch your neck. You fall. Hard. Dust in your mouth. Vision swimming. You try to crawl, but the boar is looming. One moment you're there, the next, not. They'll probably drag your body out with hooks. Or leave it for the buzzards circling overhead. There's no ceremony. No marker. No name on a wall. Just blood-soaked sand and another round of applause. You were the pre-show, after all. Up next. The chariot race. Nobody remembers the warm-up act. But if you'd lived even a moment longer, you might have noticed that a few in the crowd looked away near the end. Maybe a mother. Maybe a senator with his son. Just a flicker of discomfort in a sea of delight. Because even in Rome, even in the age of marble and brutality, there were a few who thought, just maybe, this was all a little much. Just not enough to stop it. Your heart's still pounding. But you've made it through wild beasts, crucifixion, even being buried alive in a tomb of salt. You deserve a break, right? Not quite. Because now, it's time to take a bath. A Roman bath. And you're going to die in it. No, not slipping on a tile or drowning in the deep end. This one's more insidious. You're about to inhale your way to oblivion. Welcome to the underground sauna chamber, known as the sudatorium. It's hot. Really hot. And not in a fun spa-day way. We're talking 120 to 130 degrees Fahrenheit, possibly more. The Romans loved a proper sweat. They believed it purified the body. Unfortunately, it also occasionally cooked it. You step inside. It's humid, suffocating, and thick with the smell of sweat, oils, mildew, and possibly someone's unfortunate breakfast. You're sweating before you've even sat down. But that's normal. What isn't normal is the faulty lead piping overhead, leaching heavy metals into the very air you're breathing. Mainstream fact: Roman baths were marvels of engineering. They used complex systems of hypocausts, underfloor heating powered by fires and channeled through stone chambers, to warm the water and air. The elite would sit for hours, chatting, grooming, debating politics. It was social, sophisticated, and sometimes lethal. You take a deep breath. That was a mistake. Because here's where things turn sideways. In poorly ventilated bathhouses, especially the cheaper working-class ones, the fumes from the heating fires could build up. Carbon monoxide, sulfur dioxide, lovely little toxins. Mix that with the Romans' obsession with using lead in everything from pipes to face creams, and your lungs are a Roman candle waiting to go off. You start to feel dizzy. Not unusual in the heat. But then the nausea hits. Your heart skips. You try to stand, but your knees go out. The room spins, and for a moment, you're unsure whether the floor is rising to meet you or you're just collapsing. Spoiler: it's the latter. There's a slave in the corner fanning the air. He doesn't react. He's seen this before. One too many rich men, trying to sweat out a hangover, fainted and never woke up. The guards will carry you out later, unless someone else needs your spot. Historians still argue whether the Romans understood the link between their plumbing and their symptoms. Some suggest they were aware lead was dangerous, but chose aesthetics over health. But it shines so nicely, you imagine a patrician saying, as he dabbed on lead-based mascara. Quirky tidbit: Nero allegedly had a bath with water infused with rose petals and wine. Imagine fainting from toxic steam in a tub that smells like someone spilled sangria at a wedding. But you're not wealthy. You're in the public thermi, crammed shoulder to shoulder with bodies slick from oil and reeking from garlic-laden lunches. You fall sideways. No one catches you. The bath is busy. No one notices. You stop sweating. That's a bad sign. Your vision narrows. Your breathing grows shallow. Someone steps over your legs, annoyed. Another pours water on a stone, releasing more scalding vapor into the air. You try to cough, but the air itself seems too thick to pull in. You realize too late that the marble walls and steamy hush are less relaxing and more final chamber. This isn't a bathhouse anymore. It's a slow cooker. Some Roman physicians, those who weren't accidentally poisoning their patients with mercury, thought the bath could cure everything from melancholy to gout. What it really cured, though, was your desire to ever sweat again. Your heart thuds once more. Then less. Then nothing. You've become another bathhouse ghost. Perhaps, in years to come, some superstitious bather will swear they feel a chill pass over them in the steam room and mutter a prayer under their breath. That's you. The vapor walker. The sweaty specter. Still, there are worse ways to go in Rome. Some historians even argue that death in the baths was peaceful, painless. Maybe. But if that's true, you should have chosen a private chamber in a senator's villa. Not the municipal meat locker packed with 30 strangers and a stench that clings like guilt. The attendants finally notice. They haul you out by the armpits. You're limp, pale, eyes half-lidded. They prop you on a bench to cool down. Someone checks your pulse, maybe. Or maybe they're just making sure you're not hogging a spot. Eventually, you're dumped behind the bathhouse, alongside old sandals and broken amphorae. You came for rejuvenation. You left, marinated. Still, your skin glows, if that's any comfort. You've endured beasts, fires, poisons, and baths that cook you from the inside out. But now, it's time to go back to nature, or at least Rome's twisted version of it. You're about to die by tree. Not crushed by a falling branch. Not struck by lightning under an olive grove. No, your final moments will come courtesy of the arbor infélix, the unlucky tree. See, in some Roman executions, the condemned were tied to a cursed or symbolic tree, often one seen as spiritually unclean. The fig, the black poplar, or the infamous wild olive were common choices. These weren't your friendly neighborhood trees. These were where criminals met their end, and stayed. You're dragged through the dust, arms bound. The crowd isn't massive, it's not a Colosseum kind of execution, but it's enough. Children whisper. Old women clutch charms. Some spectators come for justice. Others for the drama. The unlucky tree looms ahead. It's gnarled, split in places, and has clearly seen some things. Its roots curl up like fingers trying to escape. And you're going to be tied to it until you don't get up again. Mainstream fact, Rome didn't have one universal method of execution. Punishment often matched the crime. Patricide. Sewn into a sack with a snake and a monkey. Theft. Flogging, enslavement, or worse. But for certain religious crimes, or those that offended the state, the unlucky tree awaited. They tie your wrists to the branches. Your feet are barely touching the ground. Not quite hanging, not quite standing. Just enough pressure to make your joints scream and your balance impossible. Then, they leave you there. That's the whole plan. No sword. No lions. Just gravity, dehydration, and the slowly rising terror of being forgotten. Quirky tidbit. Some Romans believed certain trees absorbed sin. Like spiritual air filters. By dying on the tree, your guilt transferred into the bark. The tree did the heavy lifting, literally and metaphorically. Of course, historians still argue whether this belief was religiously institutionalized or just local folklore. Either way, you're on the sap-sucking end of the tradition. Time passes. The sun beats down. You try to shift your weight, but the ropes cut into your wrists. Your legs tremble. The bark digs into your back like 1,000 slow splinters. Crows gather. They're always first. Your mouth dries out. Your lips crack. You start seeing movement out of the corner of your eye, shadows that aren't really there. Or maybe they are. You're not sure anymore. The pain in your shoulders has gone from sharp to distant. That's not good. That's your body giving up. Someone walks past and spits at your feet. Another murmurs a prayer. No one helps. The tree just stands there, silent, watching. It's seen generations, plagues, wars, lovers and liars. Now it gets to see you, trembling, wilting like a leaf in autumn. At some point you faint, but the ropes hold you upright. You look alive, enough to delay any mercy. The night comes. The cold is worse than the sun. You shiver uncontrollably, but the ropes are still tight. Always tight. You think about screaming, but your voice barely works. And then, in the early gray haze of morning, your breath catches and doesn't come back. You're just another fruit on the unlucky tree. One of many. Eventually, the guards will cut you down. Maybe, if they remember or care. The tree remains, rooted in shame, watered by tears, and shaded by the ghosts of the condemned. Maybe one day, someone will write a poem about you. More likely, you'll rot into the soil, feeding the very bark that took your life. But hey, you've become part of the ecosystem. You're carbon neutral now. And in Rome, that's practically a miracle. You wake up in a blur of torchlight and slurred Latin, but something's wrong. Your arms are bound, yes, but not with rope. With a tight, crusted substance that smells faintly metallic. Iron shackles, maybe? No. Resin. Hardened pitch. You're stuck inside a wooden frame. Welcome to Rome's worst candlelit dinner, where you're the centerpiece. Tonight, you die as a human torch. See, the emperor, who else but Nero, is throwing one of his famous garden parties. Fireworks, wine, laughter, and illumination provided by the burning bodies of prisoners. You've heard of mood lighting, but this is ridiculous. Mainstream fact, the Roman historian Tacitus described how Nero executed Christians by smearing them with pitch, binding them to posts, and setting them alight to serve as nighttime illumination in his gardens. Whether it happened exactly as written remains debated, but the story stuck, and not just because of the fire. Right now, you're among them. Slathered in tar. A pole shoved under your arms to keep you upright. You're still alive, barely, and the scent of rosemary from the garden mingles with something sharp and nauseating. Someone's laughing in the distance. A lyre is playing. There's music. Nero loves a performance. Quirky tidbit, some accounts say Nero sang in costume during these executions, dressed as a charioteer or actor, reciting tragic verses while the victims burned. Historians still argue whether this was exaggerated to demonize him, or if he truly had that level of macabre flair. Either way, you're the prop in this night's entertainment. You hear a hiss, then feel the first spark. It lands near your foot. Your skin doesn't catch right away. That's almost worse, because you know it will. You know this is the prelude. The final flicker of anticipation. You try to scream, but your mouth is gagged with linen. Your head jerks wildly. Eyes wide. The pitch ignites. And now you're alight. Flames dance up your legs, hungrily lapping at the tar-soaked cloth wrapped around your waist. The heat is immediate, unforgiving, personal. You are no longer a person. You are firewood with a pulse. Some guests don't even look. They sip their wine. Others point, amused. One raises a goblet and toasts. To light. To Rome. To theater. Your skin splits. The pitch makes it worse, keeping the flames clinging to your body like jealous lovers. You can't think. You can't pray. You can't even breathe. The smoke finds your lungs before the heat can claim your brain. That's your one small mercy. Then again, is it really a mercy if your last conscious thought is, I'm burning alive at a dinner party? And somewhere, from a raised marble balcony, Nero sings. Some verses about Troy, maybe. Or Orpheus. Something tragic to match the ambience. He calls it art. You call it the worst possible Yelp review of a garden soiree. Eventually, the light from your body fades. The embers smolder. The bones char. A servant comes by and sweeps up the ashes. Someone else is already being dragged into place. It's a rotation. A lineup. You weren't the first, and you won't be the last. Rome is full of spectacle. Gladiators, plays, triumphs. But nothing draws a crowd quite like a living candle. The party ends. The guests go home. The torches are extinguished. But the story burns forever. You've been speared, roasted, mauled, and made into a lamp. At this point, you're probably hoping for a death with a little dignity. Something quick, clean. Sorry to disappoint. Because now, you're going to be executed by Pina Cullii, the punishment reserved for Rome's ultimate taboo, patricide. And it's creative. You're sewn into a leather sack. That's bad. But it gets worse. You're not alone. Joining you inside this increasingly squirmy death sack are a dog, a monkey, a snake, and sometimes even a rooster. Live ones. Angry ones. Confused ones. And you're all going into the river together. Mainstream fact. Pina Cullii, literally penalty of the sack, was reserved for those who killed their fathers. Romans viewed parricide as not just a crime against family, but against the very structure of the state. The punishment changed over time, but by the imperial period, this animal-packed drowning ritual had become the standard. Your mouth is dry. Your legs are bound. The leather is hot, tight, and stinks like wet goat. The dog is barking hysterically, the monkey is screeching, and the snake, well, the snake is somewhere at your feet. Probably curled in your lap. You don't want to look. Quirky tidbit, no one's quite sure why those specific animals were chosen. Historians still argue whether each had symbolic meaning, the dog for loyalty betrayed, the monkey for chaos, the snake for deceit. Or maybe the whole thing was just designed for maximum panic. The sack is lifted. You lurch sideways as someone hauls the bundle over their shoulder. You can't see anything. You only feel the shift, the jostling bodies, the sweltering heat inside this mobile zoo of death. You hit the water. At first, there's a whoosh of cold, a rush that almost feels like relief. Almost. Then the panic starts. The monkey claws at your face. The dog bites your leg. The snake wraps around your ankle. And you can't move. You can't see. You can barely breathe as the sack begins to fill and sink. The leather tightens with water. Air vanishes. The animals thrash in pure, blind survival. And so do you. But it's no use. You think of your father, his face, his voice, maybe even his last breath. You try to remember if this punishment is worse than the crime. Or maybe you were innocent. Maybe it was all a lie, and you were framed. Too late now. The last thing you feel is the press of fur, feather, and fong as your lungs beg for air and find only water and chaos. The sack drifts downward. A fisherman might find it days later, torn open, animals gone, bones jumbled. Or maybe no one ever does. You vanish into the murky riverbed like so many before you, a parricide erased by panic and ritual. Rome loved spectacle. But sometimes, it loved symbolism more. And in this case, the symbol was clear. Break the bloodline, and you drown with beasts. You open your eyes and blink against sunlight, but this isn't freedom. You're shackled at the neck, wrists, and ankles, your body forced forward in a chain gang of sweat-drenched souls. There's a long road ahead, literally. And it's dusty, hot, and lined with jeering citizens. Today, you're walking your way to death. Via crucifixion. You've heard of it. Everyone has. But the stories don't do it justice. See, when people think of crucifixion, they usually picture the final pose. Arms stretched, feet pinned, head sagging. But Rome, in all its industrious creativity, made sure the entire process hurt, start to finish. You're not just executed. You're paraded, broken, and humiliated every step of the way. Mainstream fact. Crucifixion wasn't unique to Rome, but the empire industrialized it. It was used primarily for slaves, rebels, and the lowest criminals, those Rome didn't just want to kill, but to humiliate as a warning to others. Spartacus's defeated followers? Over 6,000 were crucified along the Appian Way. Your back is already raw from flogging, one of the pre-game rituals. Roman whips weren't leather straps, they were barbed with metal or bone. Every lash didn't just cut, it dug. So now, as you're forced to carry the horizontal beam of your own cross, called the patibulum, each step sends shockwaves up your spine. The street is loud. Vendors shout. Children run alongside the condemned. A baker tries to sell flatbread off to the side, barely glancing up. Another day, another crucifixion. You stumble. The guards shove you upright. No mercy. If you fall, you slow the whole display. You're not a person anymore, you're a statement in motion. Quirky tidbit. Crucifixions were often scheduled to coincide with public holidays or festivals to maximize exposure. Some scholars argue crucifixion sites were chosen not for their practicality but for their visibility. High hills, city gates, busy roads. The death wasn't the point. The performance was. Eventually, you reach the hill. You're thrown onto the dirt. The vertical post is already there, embedded in the ground. The guards lift your beam and slam it into place. They don't always use nails. Sometimes it's ropes. Today, lucky you, it's nails. One through each wrist, not the palms, they'd rip too easily. Through the space between bones, right where the nerves bunch up. Then your feet, stacked and driven through with a single spike. It's not about precision. It's about permanence. And then, you hang. Gravity becomes your worst enemy. Every breath takes effort. You're pulling up on shredded wrists just to inhale. Your legs cramp. Your chest tightens. The pain doesn't spike, it plateaus into a long, aching eternity. The sun climbs. The crowd murmurs. Flies gather. You think of water, of shade, of silence. Instead, you get jeers. Where's your God now? Someone yells. You don't answer. You can't. Historians still argue whether Roman crucifixions always ended in death by asphyxiation, blood loss, or sheer exhaustion. Some victims reportedly lasted days. Others slipped away in hours. It depended on the weather, the injuries, and the cruel mood of the executioners. You're not sure how long you've been up here. Time has melted, but you know when the end begins. Your arms tremble. Your breaths come faster. Your body sags. Someone approaches with a sponge. Finally, water? Nope. Vinegar. Just enough to mock you. Your vision darkens at the edges. Your legs twitch. Your thoughts flicker, disorganized, half-formed. The crowd loses interest. Some wander off. And then, still nailed, still bound, still high above the dust and noise, you stop. No final words. No dramatic thunderclap. Just stillness. Eventually, a guard walks over and stabs your side to make sure. No heartbeat. Just a sigh of muscle. You're left there for the birds. Rome wants everyone to remember. And they will. It's dark when you awaken, or maybe it's just the lack of torches. Either way, you can't see more than a few feet in front of you. You're underground. Damp. The smell of mold, rot, and something far worse clings to your nostrils like wet cloth. You've been sentenced to damnatio ad bestias, condemnation to the beasts. Rome doesn't just want you dead. It wants you shredded, stomped, or swallowed in the most theatrical way possible. Preferably with ticket sales. You're in a holding pen beneath the amphitheater. Probably the Colosseum, though it could be one of its dozens of imitators spread across the empire. Rome knew how to franchise cruelty. A metal grate swings open. Light pours in. You and a half-dozen others are shoved toward the center of a massive arena. Blinding sun above, deafening cheers all around. The roar hits like a wave. For a moment, you almost forget your lunch. Mainstream fact, damnatio ad bestias was commonly used for slaves, traitors, and early Christians. It wasn't always a lion. Sometimes it was a leopard, a bear, a pack of dogs, even wild boars. The Romans had a whole menu of mayhem. And often, it was all just part of the day's entertainment, right between the jugglers and the chariot races. Your feet crunch against sand. The gates slide shut behind you. The air is dry, dusty, and electric with tension. From the opposite side of the arena, another gate lifts. The crowd goes quiet. Then, a rumble, a snarl, a flash of movement, and suddenly, there it is, a lion. Or maybe a tiger. Stripes don't matter when they're lunging at your face. You and the others instinctively scatter, but it doesn't help much. The beast picks off one man in seconds, pouncing with terrifying efficiency. There's a scream, cut short. Blood in the sand. You backpedal, grabbing a discarded stick, more a prop than a weapon. Quirky tidbit, sometimes the condemned were armed with dull swords or even wooden spoons, just to draw things out. Historians still argue whether this was considered a mockery or some twisted gesture of mercy. Either way, it didn't help. The beast circles. It's not just hungry, it's trained. Some of these animals were handled by bestiarii, professionals who knew how to whip them into a frenzy, then release them at just the right time. Think of it as a gladiator match, except only one side has claws. The animal lunges again. You dodge, barely. It clips your arm, leaving 4 parallel gashes. The crowd roars with approval. You don't know whether to be proud or terrified. Maybe both. The gate opens again. A second animal. 2 now. 1 in front. 1 behind. You can smell them. The musk. The saliva. The hot, wet breath of death inches from your spine. You swing your stick in a wide arc. It connects, surprising both you and the creature, but that only enrages it. Now it's not hunting. It's punishing. You go down. And everything becomes fur and fong and fire. The arena watches in gleeful horror. Some cheer, others wince. A few avert their eyes. But most lean forward. Because this is Rome. And Rome knows how to end a story. Eventually, you stop moving. What remains of you is dragged off stage. The sand is raked. The gate is closed. The next act is already waiting. Maybe a juggler. Maybe a chariot. But you were the intermission. You wake up strapped to a board, horizontal, but not comfortably so. Your arms are pinned. Your legs are tied. And your head is tilted backward, chin forced up toward the ceiling. There's a funnel in your mouth. It's made of metal. Cold. Too wide. You can't spit it out. You can't speak. And then they start pouring. It's water. For now. Welcome to forced overfeeding, Roman edition, a method as humiliating as it is horrifying. You might have thought this kind of thing belonged to darker ages or torture manuals from the future. But no, Rome got there first. Not with refined clinical efficiency, but with theatrical, excessive cruelty. You're about to be stuffed like a goose fattened for a banquet, except you are the banquet. Mainstream fact. The Romans practiced forced overfeeding both as a torture and, strangely, as a twisted form of luxury punishment. Some slaves and criminals were fed until rupture. Others, particularly during the reign of depraved emperors like Nero or Elagabalus, were overfed and displayed in grotesque feasts as living punchlines. At first, it's just water. You gag a little, but manage. But they don't stop. Another jug. Another. Another. You feel your stomach stretch. A pressure builds in your ribs like someone's inflating a balloon inside your gut. The pain isn't sharp yet, but it's coming. You twitch against the restraints. The board creaks. They move on to food. Bread mash. Soft cheeses. Honeyed wine. More liquid, more bulk. A pasty sludge shoved in through the funnel, your jaw cranked open so far it aches. You're choking. You cough, and it goes up your nose. You taste bile. Someone nearby chuckles. Quirky tidbit. Some emperors kept slaves specifically for digestive display. These unfortunate souls were stuffed for hours, then paraded naked through banquet halls with distended bellies while guests made bets on when they'd vomit, or worse. Think dinner theater, but everyone's complicit. The pressure is unbearable now. Your belly looks pregnant. Ridiculously so. Like it doesn't belong to your frame. The skin is stretched tight, shiny, and red. It pulses like a drum. You hear someone say, "He's almost there." There. Where? Then you realize what they're waiting for. Rupture. Historians still argue whether actual stomach explosion was common, or if most victims simply passed out long before. But there are records of abdominal rupture caused by extreme overconsumption, so it's not a total myth. You squirm. You beg with your eyes. But they don't stop. More slop. More wine. More pressure. And then, something gives. You feel it deep inside, like a pop, a snap, a silent internal scream. You don't even have time to cry out. Just a deep gurgle and a flash of white-hot pain. The crowd gasps. A cheer rises. You go limp. The body keeps twitching for a while, nerves misfiring like sparks in a dying fire. And then silence. A few nobles nearby sip wine and shake their heads. Excessive, one mutters. Another laughs. Well, that's Rome. And that's it. No sword. No beast. No fire. Just a funnel, a feast, and a fatal finale. You're stripped naked and tied to a tall, narrow stake in the center of a quiet courtyard. This time, there's no crowd. No beasts. No blood, yet. Just silence. And a strange sense of heaviness in the air, like everyone knows what's coming, and no one wants to say it aloud. You've been sentenced to death by smoke, a rare and nearly forgotten punishment, reserved for certain kinds of traitors, poisoners, and those whom Rome wanted to vanish without much spectacle. At first, you think, maybe this won't be so bad. Smoke. Compared to crucifixion or lions. But no. This is worse. They place a large ceramic pot beneath your feet, wide, shallow, and already smoldering. The smoke begins as a lazy ribbon, curling around your toes, slipping between your legs. It's made of sulfur, wet wood, and oils. Not exactly the scent of a summer bonfire. Mainstream fact, while not Rome's go-to execution method, smoke was used as a slow suffocation tactic. Sometimes in sealed rooms, other times in pits or caves. Nero reportedly used it to punish arsonists, an ironic touch, given the rumors about him and the Great Fire. Your throat burns almost immediately. Not like a campfire whiff. This smoke is thick, cloying, and greasy. You inhale once, cough uncontrollably, and then try holding your breath. But you can't hold it forever. The pot is replenished. More resin. More bark. More sulfur. The smoke gets heavier. Not just in the air, but in your lungs. It doesn't just sting, it coats. You can taste the burning. It's like trying to breathe through hot milk and vinegar. Your eyes water so badly you can't see. You scream, but even that hurts. They wrap a cloth around your face. Not to protect you but to keep the smoke in. A linen funnel. Some versions included a sack over the head, soaked in oil, to intensify the smothering. Quirky tidbit, there's mention of a Roman execution chamber nicknamed the smoke room by later historians, possibly located beneath a bathhouse. Whether it truly existed or was poetic exaggeration is still debated. But the idea stuck. The silent death, the hidden scream, it left a mark. You begin to spasm. Your lungs are desperate. They contract and expand in frantic rhythm, trying to find air, but there's none left. Just a dense cloud of poison. You fall sideways but the ropes hold. Now your body just droops. The guards don't even look at you. One of them scratches his beard, muttering something about the wind shifting. It's a slow way to die. Slower than you'd think. You remain conscious far too long. Your body fights far too hard. But it's a losing battle from the moment the fire is lit. Eventually, your vision narrows. Not black, but gray. Everything softens. The crackle of the flames, the murmur of nearby feet. It all fades into one long, buzzing sigh. Then there's nothing. No spectacle. No applause. Just a thin pillar of smoke rising above the courtyard, curling into the Roman sky. And by midday, even that's gone. The chamber is cold and quiet, though you don't know why you expected anything different. You were told there'd be justice. Instead, you get darkness, and a bucket. They call this punishment the vessel, though its other name is Cullius, and it's far worse than it sounds. You're here because you've been convicted of parricide, killing your father, mother, or both. Rome didn't take that lightly. In fact, there was a specific, carefully choreographed punishment for it. No improvisation. Just ritual, cruelty, and a burlap sack. At first, they beat you. Not to kill you, just enough to weaken you, bruise the ego, break the posture. Then they strip you naked, bind your limbs, and walk you to the sack. It's huge. Heavy canvas or leather, reeking of mildew and blood. And inside, animals. Mainstream fact, the punishment for parricide under Roman law was known as pena cullii, the penalty of the sack. The condemned was sewn inside with a roster of companions, a dog, a rooster, a monkey, and a snake. Yes, really. The rooster goes in first, squawking in protest. Then the monkey, who screams and flails in the confined space. The snake is handled with a pole and dropped in last. It coils instantly, sensing the chaos. The dog fights the hardest. And then, it's your turn. They shove you in headfirst, folding your body in like dirty laundry. The sack closes above you, and the world becomes soundless chaos. Fur, feathers, fangs. Everything thrashes. You can't tell where your limbs end and the monkeys begin. The dog barks inches from your ear. The rooster pecks your cheek. The snake, oh, the snake, you can't even locate it, which is worse than seeing it. The sack is sealed, tied tight with ropes and waxed cord. Then comes the worst part. They carry you. Not far. Just to the river. Because the punishment isn't just the sack, it's drowning in it. Historians still argue whether the full roster of animals was always used, or if substitutions were common. Some records suggest cats, others leave out the monkey. But the point wasn't accuracy. It was shame. And suffering. The sack hits the water with a heavy thunk. For a second, you float. The animals panic. The dog tries to swim in place. The monkey bites you. The snake wraps around someone, maybe your leg. Then you start to sink. The water seeps in. Cold. Heavy. Inevitable. You can't move. You can't scream. Every breath is a gamble between air and snake. Quirky tidbit. Some Roman writers insisted that parricide destroyed the immoral fabric of the universe, and required a punishment that symbolized total removal from earth, air, fire, and sky. Hence the sack, the river, and the deniable fate. You descend. The sack tightens around your chest as it fills. There's kicking, hissing, biting. The rope cuts into your skin. You try to hold your breath, but it's pointless. Panic takes over. You suck in, and it's not air. Water floods your nose, your mouth. The snake tightens. The monkey shrieks. The rooster is silent. And in that final moment, it's not death you fear. It's how absurd it all is. You, a grown Roman citizen, dying in a burlap sack filled with zoo animals. But Rome had a flair for the dramatic. And this was its final curtain. But now, everything quiets. No ropes. No fires. No laughter from the stands. No flailing arms or panicked animals. Just stillness. You float, slowly, through the silence of ancient time. The cruelty fades. The blood dries. Even the Colosseum crumbles, stone by stone, under the weight of centuries. What once was a roar is now a whisper. Your breathing slows. The weight on your chest lifts. That sense of dread, of running, of trying to escape the inevitable, melts. There's nothing left to fight. Let your mind drift away from the sack, the beasts, the smoke. There are no more punishments. Just the warm hum of sleep, like the quiet hush of distant waves brushing against an old Roman shore. A gentle breeze moves through the olive trees. The sun sets behind the 7 hills. And for once, no one's watching. You're safe now. Tomorrow, the empire will rise again. The statues will glare. The Senate will debate. The crowds will cheer. But tonight, you rest. So go ahead. Let your body sink a little deeper into the mattress. Let your fingers unclench. Let your breath grow soft, long, and slow. You've traveled through the worst Rome could offer, and somehow, you're still here. Safe. Whole. And finally, free to sleep.